Hello, everybody. I am going to say welcome back to myself. What an exciting time it is. I took a long break, as many of you know. Um, I had to work on my health, which I'm still doing it. I got COVID. I had a wedding for my daughter, and there has been so many travels for business and others. And I had to do whatever I had to do, and I had to sacrifice the show. As you come in, please tell me that you're here because otherwise I don't see you unless you tell me that you are here, and I see you guys joining, and thank you so much. And actually Brandon just joined me, and I'm going to bring him in a minute. And before I bring him, I want to tell you a little bit about what this interview means to me and what it should mean to you. I really think that when we set our expectations and intentions, what happens after, what develops from it is so much bigger than if we just, oh, let me see what the show is and let me see what's going to happen from it. And when I read this book, We Are All Paralyzed by Brandon Salser, I had an intent. My intention was that I knew the person who had referred the book to me, which was Steve Hardison. And if you do your research and you find out who Steve is, you will understand that Steve is focused on being. It's all about not what you're doing, but how you are being as a human on this planet. And it meant so much to me when he said, read this book. And this is the first book he referred me. He already gave me another book I already finished. I mean, if Steve tells me to read something, I stop everything and I read it. And when I read this book, I understood, especially where it came from. I understood the message. It was such a message of hope. And also I'm a religious woman, many of you know, I am Jewish. I am not a Christian, but we learn from all humans and all experiences. And Brandon's faith, what I saw in Brandon, in his story, it is something to learn. It is something to apply into all of our lives. So it doesn't matter which religion you practice. It doesn't matter the denomination. That doesn't matter. All that it matters is when adversity strikes, the conversations that we have within us that shakes our faith. What happens? What should happen? What could happen when we stay strong in our faith and in the belief that what happens to us and for us and for our benefit, not to ruin our life, not to hurt us, but to give us an opportunity for growth. So without further ado, I'm bringing Brandon to the stage. Well,
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure, and sorry I rolled in a little late. No pun intended. I don't know if they told you. I looked at the time and I assumed it was Mountain Standard, and it was Eastern, and so I'll go right have dinner with my wife and a client, and I committed to you, and that was my intention, and I'm glad I made it happen. So thanks for covering for me.
No problem. And I feel super bad that I had to call you. And
No, it's my fault. Thanks for reminding me, and it reminded me. I had something that happened a little recently that reminded me of this. And life never really goes according to plan. You guys notice that?
Yes.
If you think about your life and think, has your life gone according to how you thought it would go? I bet you would all raise your hand and say it hasn't. And that's the beauty of it. And I was at a speaking engagement once where I was late. I was speaking at a church house, and and there was many churches on the street. I didn't know what one to go to. I assumed it was this one. I wheel in, and there's about a couple thousand people there. And as I'm wheeling in, the guy's up on the stage introducing me. And I'm kind of yelling at everybody, hey, I'm here. Don't worry about it. I was lost, but I'm here. Thanks for having me. He looks at me oddly and then begins to read the introduction. And as he's reading the introduction, I start listening to it. And he said, today our guest speaker is a world-renowned ballet dancer. And I realized I was at the wrong church. and so what I've learned to do is I had to turn around and press forward, and literally to get out of there. And it's something that I've learned to do, and something that the book, I hope, teaches is when life doesn't go according to plan, do you choose to press forward? And one thing I've learned, and I don't think I brought it up in the book, but one thing I've learned after sitting down in a wheelchair, one of my experiences put me in a chair, but what I've learned is, in order for me to press forward anywhere, I live in Utah, and nothing's ever flat. Everything has a gravitational pull. And I liken that to life, is that life at times wants to pull us a certain direction, oftentimes downhill. I mean, look at TV, look how divided we are as a nation, as a world. It's just the nature of the world we live in. But what I've learned is that if I can hold on to my wills, both of them, and learn to press forward, I don't allow the gravity of my circumstance to take me downhill. And did I lose? Am I lost? Are you with me? It looks like we lost connection.
I'm with you. I could see you.
Good. All right. Sorry. I thought, oh no, here we go again. And so I've learned to press forward. I've had to hold on to my willpower. And, if you ask me, well, what is that? That it's my purpose. What am I holding on to?
Can you see me?
I can see you. Yep.
Okay. Very good. I wasn't sure. Yeah. And you can hear me, right?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay,
yes.
fantastic. I want to ask you to go over a little bit about your story, because the people who are here, or the people who are going to be watching on a replay, I wrote a little bit about you, but they don't know. And I think that I think it's very interesting, because I have gone through lots of adversities in my life as well, different types, but many different ones. And some people go through one or two major things in their lives, and they're not hit, and then suddenly something happens, and it's like that compacting of things, and people say, oh my God, didn't I go through enough? But all of these experiences have different lessons, different messages. And I think it's important for people to know where you're coming from when you are talking about press forward, when you're talking about not letting gravity pull you down. Those are beautiful things, but people don't understand that for you, what happened, like the multiple situations that happen, it is hard to keep that attitude. So share a little bit. You don't have to go into too much detail, because I want people to buy your book and experience the story as I experienced. And I hope that people do as they're reading this. And I never do sales, and this is not a purpose sales. This is a story that you should read, but go a little bit, because once we're going to go into your faith, your resilience, your tenacity, I want people to understand why you are somebody who can talk about that, like, better than anybody that I know.
Yeah, I think I can talk about it because I've been broken so many times, in every sense of the word, physically, spiritually, mentally, and I haven't always reacted in the right manner, as the book, as you can attest when you read the book.
Mm-hmm.
But how have I been broken so many times? Before I get into it, I guess one thing I've learned is I don't think heaven's ready for me yet. I've given them ample opportunities to have me, and they keep on spitting me back down here in mortality. When I was 12, the first major accident that I had was a head accident. It was something that could have been prevented. I chose not to wear a helmet, and I went mountain biking and had an interesting experience where I got off my bike to pray because I just felt connected with God. It was beautiful. It was a Wasatch Front during summertime. For those that have been in the Wasatch Front in Utah skiing or hiking in the mountains, it's a spiritual experience. It's beautiful. Well, I got on my bike just to thank God, creation, the universe, whatever you call it. And I got back on my bike, and I felt like something was going to happen to me. And sure enough, got down to the bottom of the trail. And since I was only a few blocks away from my house, I decided to go and continue my journey. The Boy Scouts that were with me, I was at a Boy Scout trip, and they left me because I told them I was going to get off my bike to take a break, and not knowing that I was going to pray and just thank God for the beauty. What happened to me is I blacked out shortly thereafter, and the corner of my head tagged the corner of a concrete curb, and I was out for, I think, a half hour or longer. And when I woke up, I was surrounded with my Boy Scout troop and the ambulance. And the only words that I kept on saying was, I got to tell you about this amazing experience I had. People I saw, the people I met. I had a spiritual experience that I wanted to share. And they told me, don't worry about it. Just, you're you're in shock. It's best for you just to calm down, and you have plenty of time to tell the story. Well, I was taken to the hospital, and my parents were there, and I wanted to tell them all about it. And the long story being, what happened is they sent me in for an X-ray, and about 2 hours later, I finally was able to tell my story. And when I did, it's like someone hit the reset button, and I completely forgot about the whole experience, but the essence of my soul didn't. And I think in the book, I mentioned something that I really believe that the beginning of our heartache is also the beginning of God's for us, because He knows that remodeling in our lives is going to take some trials. And I really believe that this trial and many others that I'll speak about is connection is key. I wouldn't have connected to my higher power if I didn't know I needed Him. And it took trials for me to see that. And so with this trial in particular, I went home that evening and I felt like I was on my deathbed. And I had my dad pray for me. And the next morning we went to the hospital, and I'm in a CAT scan room, and they're double checking to make sure I'm okay. And I can hear them screaming, and they're shouting, and they're saying that that so-and-so has minutes to live. And I thought, surely they're not talking about me. And they were. They ran out, and they put me on a gurney, and they rushed me out to Life Flight, which is a helicopter pad. And they told me that I had minutes to live. And what had happened is my main artery inside of my head broke from that accident. And you usually die within hours. And for some reason, God kept me, and was not my time to go. And I was life flighted and had about 9-10 hours of serious cranial surgery. What happened afterwards was a really difficult experience for me. It took me 5 years to learn how to speak again from that accident. And when I say that, I mean, I used to stutter really, really, really bad. I forgot to do my spelling, my math. I forgot how to ski, and holy cow! Right now we've got like the most snow we've ever had in the Wasatch Front. I don't want to get off topic, but I love skiing. Forgot how to do that. and I lost all my confidence. One thing I do remember in the hospital, I don't remember much, but one thing I do remember is the surgeons, they all came in and they said, Brandon, we just want to tell you about what we experienced. We went in to save your life. And I'm not religious. That's what they were saying, the head surgeon. But I went in there and it appeared to me that someone beat me to it. Someone else decided to save your life. And so what happened is we went in there to plug the main artery. And what we saw instead was a clogged blood clot, keeping that artery from not bleeding. We think that clogged blood clot developed sometime the night prior at a certain time. Well, that time was the time me, my dad, and my mom got together in faith, and we prayed for a miracle. And we witnessed one. And it was a beautiful thing. And of course, it had to be God's will. But I believe that we enabled that by acting in faith, pressing forward. And it was a beautiful thing to witness. But that didn't keep me from the hardship that was going to follow. And it was very, very, very trying for me. I was a seventh grader at the time. I had just moved from Colorado. My best friends, one was Jewish, one was, all different types of religions, and I loved them. And they were great examples to me. And I hope I was an example to them as well. Living here in Utah, it's a little different. I was a member of a faith that majority of them are that faith. And it was difficult for me to connect because I was a new guy. And when you're in the seventh grade, boy, you're trying to find yourself. Junior high is a tough, tough time. And when I couldn't speak, it was difficult. And I wanted attention, like we all do. I wanted to be acknowledged. And the only acknowledgement I got was I was being bullied and I was called Frankenstein. If you remember in the book, the first day I get there, I got staples in my head still, and my mom's petrified that I'm going to die at school because it's like sending your son off to war, knowing that you got a weak kid that has a weakness and he's wearing a hat. And if someone hits him, he's done. He's done. It took some faith on her part to send me away. And so kids would take off my hat, throw it down the hallway, call me Frankenstein. And I couldn't fight because I couldn't. And I couldn't even talk to defend myself. And it was a very humbling and trying time for me, those first few years. As my speaking gradually got better, I started to live in my ego more and more. And I don't mention it in the book as much, but I'm trying to define it in a sense of what I did wrong in that circumstance. What I mean by that is I was dependent upon what others thought of me. I was depending upon what I could do to find my self-worth. Ego is like using fingers to hold on to anything that gives you value, and I was desperately looking for it. Dr. Wayne Dyer says something I love. I think ego says edging God out. Mm-hmm. And I certainly was. And I realized something. There's an experience in the book I won't get into, but there was an experience I had that made me realize something. And it was this, is that fear tells you have to go and find your purpose. Love tells you you've been born with one. And it took me living in my ego to find that I was actually born with purpose. That was my first experience, my first refinement. Now, in the book, I did some stupid things. I think we all do. I should I get into that? I don't want to go off topic here, but should I get a little bit of someone the ego made me do?
I think yes, because faith is right, fights the ego, helps fight the ego. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, since I couldn't get attention, since I couldn't speak and get the attention that I desired, I was going to take it. I was going to get it anyway. So I would do things that would put attention on me. And one of those experiences, I'm speaking now, I'm looking out my window. We had 14 inches of snow here yesterday, and it's coming, and it was a winter like we're having when I was in high school. And it was supposed to be a snow day, and it wasn't. And so I decided to go and just make it a snow day anyway. So I got on a snowmobile with my friend. We left school, and we decided to go through a drive-through at McDonald's on snowmobiles. Yeah, that's logical, especially if you're living in your ego. And I wanted the attention, and after that, we decided to go at the high school and to remind all the kids that were at school that this should be a snow day. And we shut down the whole high school. Everyone's looking out the windows, like yelling, cheering us on. And I have a helmet, so I look invisible, and they don't know who I am, but I'm happy to get the attention. And I got off my snowmobile and started just, like a director in a choir, just feeding off the energy. And suddenly there was a squadron of police cars that came in to shut it down. And I knew that if I got caught in front of my peers, that would not play well on an ego. And so what did I do? Well, I escaped. And what proceeded? Well, it was a high-speed chase in Bountiful Community with all the cops and two knuckleheads on snowmobiles. We ran probably as far as we thought we could get away from them, and we went down into a ravine, a canyon, and we waited for 2 hours or so. We didn't hear any cops or sirens, so we thought we were safe. We walk out of there thinking we're off scot-free. This is how dumb we were. We get up, and there's the whole 15 cop cars almost surrounding us. And I look at my friend, and we're talking. I'm like, how did they find us? And it was like the cop says, "Hey, you knuckleheads, we followed your tracks." And so they caught us, and we had a record, but one thing I did learn from that experience that was very motivational for me is I found out all the wonderful ways that I can serve the community. And that was 250 hours worth of community service. And it was a good learning experience for me. I knew then at that time that if I didn't change my ways, I would always be addicted to living in my ego. And ultimately, that's not who I wanted to be, nor it's not what God wanted me to be either. And what I didn't realize at the time is that God was getting ready to call me essentially to other trials, other learning moments that would make me a stronger person in every sense of the word. So when I graduated high school, I had an interesting experience. I read into the Old Testament how our bodies are temples and how they house our spirit. Well, I really took keen, for some reason, that just spoke to me in a powerful way. And so I made it a point to honor my body. It was a temple. I didn't want to defile it. I wanted to honor it. And so I worked out as hard as I could. I'm 6'2", and at the time I was probably, I don't know, well, I was skinny, not that strong. And within a year, this frame became someone who was very, very strong. I was 6'2", benching 350 pounds, and just solid. And I honored it. I really felt that I was honoring God by honoring my body, and it felt good to do that. There was one day in particular in the book that I think I'll highlight. I was going out of the gym, and what I would do is I would go to the gym early in the mornings, go to school, and go to work, and then go back to the gym. That's what I did. One morning, I was walking out of the gym, and something hit me. It was a feeling inside of my soul that radiated within me, and it said, "Brandon, you need to work out your neck." And I thought, well, that's kind of silly. Why would I want to do that? For me, biceps, chest, all the major muscles that you can think of that for me that were priority number one. I did something that I think changed the course of my life. And it's something that I teach that maybe I can get into a little bit. And I call it the power of the pause. And what I mean by that is sometimes we're so into our head that we cannot hear what the heart has to say, the soul has to say. And the soul is connected with the divine. And that's how God speaks to us, I really believe. And I chose to pause and be still for a moment. And when you're still, it allows your better self to catch up to you to make the right call. And I did. And there wasn't a day that went by after that I did not work out my neck. Unbeknownst to me, 6 months or so prior, that very action saved my life. Because during the summer of 98, after school got out, I went down to Lake Powell, Utah with my family and friends, and I was running down a sandhill. And as I'm running down the sandhill, I'm getting ready to dive into the water. But before I did, my legs got tangled in the sand awkwardly, and it forced me to dive much sooner than I was ready. And when I dove into, I didn't know, a shallow sandbank, 3 inches, 4 inches of water, and I broke my neck. It was so violent. Flipped out of the water, 360 degrees out of the water, and fell further down into the lake. And I started to sink. And it was the worst send-off party I think I could ever have to dying. It was my mom saw it, my family saw it. You could hear the cries and the screams for me as I was sinking. And it was awful. Stuff of nightmares.
I
And I'm
want you to
thinking,
know, I want you to know it from as a reader, I could totally visualize the scene as you described it. I saw it. It wasn't that
yes,
I was
good.
reading, I was seeing it happen. And it was because you were so descriptive in a way
Yeah,
of how it was happening that I was reading and and I wanted to stop you, you know? It was almost like it was happening right in front of me. It was very powerful the way you told.
good. Oh, I love that. I wanted to be as descriptive as I could so that the reader gets a sense of it for what it felt like, and then relate it to maybe other experiences in their life where they've had similar paralyzing moments.
Mhm.
And this was a moment that, again, no one ever thinks of. Like, life happens sometimes, and and this is something that I never ever would have imagined would have happened to me, but it happened. And as I'm sinking in the water, I'm thinking, okay, God, this is how I'm going to. I guess this is how my journey ends. And right when I'm thinking that, a buddy of mine flips me over in the water and rescues me as I'm literally about ready to run out of air, and swims me over to the sandbank. And then again, here we go again. And it was familiar in the sense that I've been here before. My head accident prepared me for this. And so what did I do? The very first thing I grabbed or chose to hold on to was, Dad, we need to pray. And There's a saying that there's no such thing as an atheist in a foxhole. And I was in one of the hardest foxholes I've ever been in my life, and it was that moment that I chose to. I call it raising my Ebenezer. There's a song that talks about that, and trust me, I wanted to raise my other Ebenezer, and that's Ebenezer Scrooge. And get very mad and discouraged. But the Ebenezer I'm talking about is, if you look up the definition, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's a monument of faith. And for those that are hikers, you've seen Ebenezer's rocks that are stacked up. In fact, there's a great story in the Old Testament about that when they crossed a river, and it's a miracle. They raised an Ebenezer. I wanted that day to raise an Ebenezer, my monument of faith, and that was one of my main ones. And I chose, instead of fear, I chose faith, and I had to. So we prayed, and after that, some miracles happened that, looking back, were miracles. 2 doctors from the ER from Colorado happened to be there right when that happened. They knew exactly how to hold my neck in a position that would prevent me from getting even more injured. What I might add, and might add to the story, if you'd like, they got a Sharpie, and they wanted to diagnose me in front of everybody. And at the time, I had my girlfriend's family, the girlfriend I was dating, and my family, and everyone else that was there. And basically what they said is, Brandon, we're going to mark areas in your body that if you can feel it, we're going to pinch you. If you can feel it, that's a good thing. So can you imagine? I mean, I've got 60 or more people staring down on me, these 2 doctors with a black Sharpie, and they're going to show me how I'm thinking how worthless I might be in front of them. And so they said, all right, Brandon, can you feel that? I said, feel what? We're pinching your toes. I know I can't. Black mark. That went up to my knees, my legs. Brandon, can you feel that? And they're looking at me, and my mom and dad, that I wanted to lie just to make them feel better, because every time I said no, their heart sank. And I said no. I went up to my chest or my waist. Can you feel that? I said no. And every time I'm envisioning, what am I losing or giving up? Walk, maybe kids, things. All these things come rushing to your mind in that moment, and it went all the way up to my neck. And then I finally said yes, and I called it the ladder of doom. And I looked up at the sky, and the words that I think I remember saying is, "Dear God, I've lost it all." Because I really did. I really felt like I did. I mean, I've talked about this millions of times, and every time I talk about it, it's like I'm back there again. So, other miracles happen. I'm not going to get into that. But what happened is I was life flighted out of that canyon, and I was waiting at a small little town airport for a corporate jet to pick me up from a hospital to hurry and rush me to Salt Lake where I could be operated on. They load me on this airplane, and I'm just down. I'm very, very low. I have a lot of darkness, and I'm thinking to myself, I don't think life could get much worse than this. And in the book, as you've read, if you recall, a bolt of lightning struck the airplane right when I was thinking that. And it scared me. It scared the nurse. The pilot, I guess, said, no, that's something that happens every once in a while. but I took it as a sign maybe from heaven saying, Brandon, I can make it worse. Don't worry about it. And so I at least stopped complaining, at least until I was on the safety of the ground. Was operated on. Was a difficult experience moment because I asked the doctor, "You're going to fix this, right?" And he said, "No, we can't fix this. All we can do is we can just fix your neck." And I remember being put to sleep, thinking, "Well, then if you can't fix me, I don't want to wake up." And I literally cried as they put me under. And then again, I wake up, and there's no one there. My family's still traveling from Lake Powell. I'm all alone, and I'm on life support on everything you can think of I'm hooked into. I've got a halo around my neck. I can barely talk and barely breathe because when you're paralyzed from the neck on down, you can't use your stomach muscles. And again, I wanted to run away from God. So what did I do? I raised my Ebenezer again. There's a song that you may be familiar with, "Come Thy Fount," every blessing. And in the lyrics, it says something, and I'm just mouthing this: prone to wander, Lord, I feel it, prone to leave the God I love. Here's my heart, Lord, take and seal it for the courts above. One thing that I did that day is I gave God my heart. I had nothing else to give. I couldn't give him my body. I give him my heart, and I chose that. That was my second adversity. And I can talk your ear off all about that. My other adversity came later on. I had got my graduate degree, and this time I'm being pretty independent, willing, and making the best out of my life sitting down. I had got my graduate degree. I always wanted to be a builder. I love building things. And when I knew I couldn't build houses, I really felt like God knew that I love building things, but He wanted me to be a builder as well. And so He taught me how to build lives. But in order for me to build the lives of others, He had to first teach me how to build my own by being broken so many times, and the remodeling it takes to remodel a man's soul, a woman's soul. It takes a lot of remodeling, and so I learned that I wanted to do that. So I got into counseling and got my graduate degree in that, my master's degree, and I celebrated that by going four-wheeling. Put hand controls on a four-wheeler, and one thing you have to know about me is I don't take no. If someone tells me I can't do it, then I'm gonna do it. It's just who I am. And so I went four-wheeling, and I was in short sleeves, short shirt, and had a phone around my neck, binoculars around my neck, a bottle of water, and off I went. Told my parents I'd be back in a few hours. Again, I'm mindful of your time. I don't want to waste time, but
You're not wasting any time.
yeah, all right. So this is what happened. I'm in a roll cage, side by side, and I'm passing people left and right. And if they only knew who was driving this ATV, they'd be amazed. Here's this guy, a quadriplegic, driving an ATV, and they just like us. They had no idea the disability I was having, or what I was facing. I just looked like one of them. I went way back in the Wasatch Front, and it was beautiful. Just these lush mountain meadows with wildflowers and wildlife, and just was again enjoying what God created. And I got to a moment where there was a fork in the road. Do you recall a Yogi Berra quote by Yogi Berra by any chance, where he says, "When there's a fork in the road," what does he say? Do you recall that? Take it.
No. Take it.
Yeah. Yogi Berra says, when there's a fork in the road, take it. I love Yogi, but that's horrible advice because I
Take
took it. I took it. Forgive me. I took it. And this is what happened. I saw a fork in the road, and the right side of the road, I knew exactly where it was going to lead. It was going to take me back home. The left side, I had no idea where it went, but I was curious to see where it would lead. I was tempted. We've all been in these situations. I took that road.
It was so metaphorical. It
Yes.
was so, you're telling me, and I'm like, I know you're going to go to the wrong one.
Yeah.
I know that the wrong one has to be the right one, meaning you needed to go through that experience, but it was heart wrenching. And I was thinking about your mom the whole time. As a
Oh, I
mom,
bet.
it was, oh my God, go to the right, go to the right. And
I know. And
obviously,
my parents were getting ready to go to a funeral, if you recall,
yes, I
right
do.
when this happened, unbeknownst to them that I was dying when they were going to a funeral. And I went down the wrong road, and I went down the left side, and I had a viewer said the right one's always the right. That's well
Um,
said.
the wrong one is always the right one. Yeah.
Yeah, the wrong one's always the right one. There you go. Well, it was the one I picked, and I went down there, and it became a horrible, horrible trap. And I tried to turn around, and it got very, very steep and narrow. And when the trail ended, there was a big cliff with a creek, and I did not did not want to go down that. It scared me, and so I turned around my ATV and I headed back up this hill. In order for me to get enough momentum to make it up it, I had to lay down the gas pretty hard to get the ATV going. I'm about halfway up, and my two front wheels go over a pine tree root over the dirt road, and it pops up my ATV, and it makes me let go of the controller, my hand control, and I start rolling backwards. My Rhino, the ATV, immediately rolls on its side, and I'm hanging upside down, and I'm getting ready to go over the cliff. Just thinking this is how it's going to end again for me. And I have these two trees that were happened to be right where they were at, grown right there, maybe for me to save my life, but they were there. And I crashed into them, and that prevented me from going over the cliff. I was ecstatic. I was so happy. I literally thought I was going to die. And I'm praising God, saying thank you, hitting upside down, cheering, and say, just I can't believe that I was saved. And then I thought, okay, I just need to grab my phone around my neck. I went to go grab my phone, and the violent nature of the rolling disconnected my phone, and my phone was literally 3 feet away from me on the ground that I could see. Talk about frustrating. I had I had a lifeline, and that was my phone. That was my call to make, and I couldn't even make that call. And it was warm weather, so I thought surely someone is going to come. I was hanging upside down, and an hour went by, nobody. Another hour went by, nobody. Now this time I'm getting really uncomfortable. The harness around my shoulders are digging into me and bleeding a little bit. All the blood's going to my brain, and the only thing that was giving me somewhat comfort were remember what happened when I rolled my ATV and I damaged somebody's home. Do you remember? Do you recall what came out of that?
So, share.
It was red ants, and these red ants start crawling all over me, biting me, and I can't I can't get them out of my nose, my mouth, and I'm like, really? And it was as if they were saying, Brandon, we're sorry about what happened, but We intend to harvest you, is basically what they were doing. And then add insult to injury. Shortly thereafter, a storm comes up and over the mountains, and it starts to rain. Now I'm 9,700 feet in elevation, and this summer storm turns into a winter blizzard. Starts snowing on me. And then I knew I was in real trouble. My lifeline was gone. My phone I couldn't pick up. Again, the only lifeline I could make, again, it's a theme here, was a prayer. It's the only phone call I could make. And I prayed and I prayed and I prayed and I prayed and I sang songs, but I was dying. Another hour goes by. My organs are shutting down. My vision's getting blurry. And then I stop shaking. And I know I'm dying, and I know just a matter of time. Now, there's something that's not in the book that maybe I can add. My book, by the way, it's non-denominational, right?
Yeah.
And I wanted to make sure that every person of faith, no matter what background, can relate.
Mm-hmm.
But there's something in it that I don't know why I didn't put in there, because there's so many unbelievable things that if I put even more unbelievable things in there, like, okay, Brandon, you had me until that point. You know what I mean? That's how crazy my story is. But something happened where I literally felt, I don't know if I heard it with my ears, but I heard it. And this is what I heard. Brandon, hold your breath. You're gonna die, and you lived a good life. Essentially, hold your breath. You don't need to suffer any longer. So I decided to hold my breath, and didn't feel right, but I did. In essence, I forced God's hand, and I was going to take my life. And it was a moment of weakness. I was suffering. And so I held my breath, and I promised myself I wouldn't breathe again. And I'm getting ready to cross over. Death isn't, just so close. I can feel it. And right before, seconds before I believed I was going to die, I had a very powerful experience where I felt a loving voice, as if it was from heaven, saying this much different, much more direct. And it was a voice that I recognized. That's the only way I can describe it. It knew me, and it basically said, Brandon, breathe. I will decide how and when you're called home. Breathe. And it warmed me in the soul so much that I knew that I couldn't disobey. And I started to breathe again. I fought for another hour and a half or so after that. And I battled with what I just experienced. And if I did, then why isn't anyone saving me? If I had this voice say this, why am I suffering? There's no one around. These stupid red ants, to the snow hitting me. There's nothing to save me. And the last words I remember saying was basically, Father, take me or save me. And I closed my eyes, and that was it. A day and a half later, I wake up miraculously in a hospital in Salt Lake in the ICU. And when I woke up, I was shocked that I was alive, fully expecting to experience something else and not nurses. And I think they were shocked when I opened my eyes as well. Long story short is that the whole time I was praying for someone to save me, for God to save me. And what I didn't realize is that He He was orchestrating a search party to come and find me. In particular, he orchestrated these two men that, as they were searching for me, they couldn't find me. There was hundreds of people looking for me. They're about ready to call off the search and rescue. And literally they were all getting hypothermia. And right when they got that call, okay, we got to call it, guys. It's dangerous conditions. That's when this gentleman felt the need to go down this path, the left side. And he saw me there. What transpired was a miracle. At least that's what they tell me. They saw me and they were taking off my clothes and they took my temperature. I was 73 degrees and I was dead. At least that's what they thought. No heartbeat. What did they decide to do? They decided to pray. He gave me a very powerful prayer, a blessing. And shortly thereafter, my heart came back. That's what they say. I was gone. I wasn't there. And they were blown away by what had happened. And they called and they said, we found him. And he's miraculously alive. But he's 73 degrees and we don't have a whole lot of time to get him off this mountain. And they knew that if they got me on the ATV, the road was so bumpy that any stress to my heart would kill me. So they tried to get life flight, a helicopter, to land. They couldn't because of the weather. It was severe.
You have membership, right?
Yes, that's right. I've got life flight miles, frequent flyer miles with life flight. In fact, I'm going with Mexico with my wife here next month. I might cash those in. Maybe we'll take life flight miles.
Please don't.
But so they found some Vietnam War pilot, a helicopter pilot, and he had a helicopter for the highway patrol. And he was able to land it and throw me in. They threw me in, and my body's halfway sticking out. It was so small, and took me to the hospital, and there they were expecting me to die, and I lived through that one. That was a major one. And then the next one was when I was working at the time. I was one of the head counselors for IHC hospital here in Utah, one of the major hospitals here. And I was a counselor to help those overcome traumatic events and help find purpose and meaning through them. And I loved that job. One morning I was going to that job. It was December, still on the road. And as I'm going down the highway, 65 miles an hour, a lady or individual in a car decides to go northbound on a southbound highway. It was a widowmaker move, and she chose me, and she hit me head on. And I mean, that story is incredible what happened, but when she hit me head on, the airbag deployed, kind of knocked me out. And as my truck was drifting over, there was a accident. I was driving by as well. And then my car, if that didn't finish me off, then surely the tow truck that was parked at the side was. And I hit the tow truck and the corner thereof, and that damaged the vehicle and nearly decapitated me. And anyway, I broke multiple bones in my body, in my face, had a facial reconstruction. And that was another one. There's another one that I didn't really write about that happened to me after I published the book. This is my Job moment. Job in the Old Testament.
Yes.
Job, I love Job. And what I love about Job is how he chose to suffer. How he chose to suffer. And what made him incredible is He didn't curse God. He didn't curse God and die like his wife told him to do, because she was just so overwhelmed with everything. But my Job moment, if these weren't enough, I had, as I was writing this book and getting the final touches on it, I had my life savings stolen from me. And what I mean by that is I put my savings in a really good investment, I thought, and I don't want to get off topic, but I got into cryptocurrency and I put it in there and was safe, I thought, and I went to go look at it, and what my life saving was, it was meager, but it turned into millions. And I went to go look for it one day and look at it, and I saw zeros. And within seconds, that was taken from me, and there was no getting it back. Millions, plus millions in in a second. And again, it was like, okay, God, I now feel like I have lost everything. And I was a very other tough thing to get through. But I was in the book because it happened right after I published it. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
Into a lot of detail, but in that last chapter, it talks about that happened. Savings.
I'm sorry. Say that again. Sorry, the connection's breaking up. You say that again.
That in the last chapter, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
In the last chapter, you talked about how many publishers didn't want to publish your book because it didn't have that happy ending that they were looking for. I think you did mention there something about losing your life. I mean, you didn't go into a lot of detail, but you did mention something like that. And I want you to know something. That chapter was so powerful. One is that what publishers put out, right? The stories that they put out, it has the kind of good ending that humans know is a good ending. Your story, to me personally, it was the kind of story that has value as what the good ending should be, which is how do you keep your faith through adversity? Because you are here to break and fix, break and mend, so that you become whole. So when you go to your next step, you have accomplished what you were supposed to do in this world. And
Yes.
the true ending is an ending that we don't know, we don't see. It's in a different place, but that's the ending. And what the publishers wanted was what in this world we call a happy ending story. So that, I want you to know that that chapter was very powerful,
Oh, thank you.
very, very, it was so good. And I'm so happy that you went ahead and you published whichever way that you managed to publish the book. And I hope that today they can hear this, they can understand that we need stories like this, like true stories, life stories. No, sometimes the end is not exactly what we perceive as a good ending, but also your ending is not going to happen until you are 120. I mean, you have a long life yet to live. And by the way, the ending that they wanted, you have accomplished that. Meaning they want, right? I mean, they wanted to hear that you were married and happy and living a good life. And I didn't know that you got, when I read the book, I didn't know that you got married. And
Yes.
then I went to
Yeah.
search for you on Facebook, I said, I need to see who's this guy. And I see the first thing that I see is the picture of your wedding. So I'm dying to know how you met her. Who is
Oh
this
yeah.
very special person?
Wow.
Um,
Very special indeed. She's the love of my life. She's I really believe that my broken roads led me to her. There's no doubt in my mind. We are connected that way. And what's very unique about the love of my life is that she went through four really hard adversities herself that strengthened her, that refined, that made her beautiful in every sense of the word, and that enabled her to see me and enabled me to see her in beautiful ways that I don't think we would have without going through these refining moments. And yes, I did have my happily ever after, and I found the love of my life. And it was, I think, one of the main reasons why God kept me alive is no, there's a reason why you're living, Brandon, and one of that is I want you to be in love. I want happiness, and I'm going to provide that. You just have to be patient and just press forward with hope. And one day it happened. I One thing that I've learned, and I've it's been a strength in my life, is that I didn't know where to find my wife, but how to find I knew how to find God in my life. And so what I did is I didn't know how to find her, but I knew how to find God. And so that's what I did. God knows my struggles. He knows what I want, my righteous desires. I'm gonna leave that up to him. So I chose to serve him. Every Tuesday I would go and I would serve. I would serve. And it was my way to say, okay, God, I trust you. And I served. One day I was getting out of my service and had a gentleman take a photo of me. In fact, it was the photo that you had of me. It's very interesting you used that photo because it
wow.
was that photo that gentleman took. He sent it into the church department that, unbeknownst to me, they were putting together a TED Talk symposium. And they said, hey, this is Brandon. I think you ought to hear from him. He's an amazing guy, has an amazing story. They reached out to me and they said, Brandon, we'd love to see if you're willing to showcase your story, but it's going to be 15 minutes and just write something and out of the thousands of people that put in their entries, they picked 6 people and I was one of them. In fact, if you guys want to see that, it's on YouTube. If you type in my name, you'll see that 15-minute TED Talk. It was a great TED Talk. I don't know if you saw it or not,
I didn't,
but
but I'm gonna
yeah,
search for it and I'm gonna put a link
yeah,
in the yeah,
please.
yeah, 100%.
So I did that, and I wheeled off there saying, "Oh man, that was amazing," and it just felt really good. And the whole night afterwards, I felt something amazing is going to happen, not knowing what that may have, what that might entail, but I chose to serve God, and I just felt something was going to happen because of that. Well, what I didn't realize that God was doing is, Brandon, what I'm doing for you is I am creating a calling card for you where you're going to be put in front of the exact person who needs to see you. And 4 months later, she sees that video on YouTube with her family, watches it, and for some reason she can't stop rewinding and rewatching it. I'd like to say it's because of my amazing good looks, but it was what she was feeling. And she reached out to me. She said, "I just want to say you're amazing. You're up to good things," and that was the extent of it. I looked at her profile. And I was like, well, she's a cute girl, and that's awesome. And certainly she's married, so I left it at that. But I did say, if you really want to really know more about that story, read my book. So she did, and she reached out again, and I looked more into her profile and realized that she was single. And we connected, and I gave her my number, and after that, that's all she wrote. It was love at the very beginning, and we dated long distance for 2.5 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was during COVID, which is crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, and so and so when I proposed to her, it was in a beautiful way, but it was founded on hope. And what I mean by that is the function I was speaking to was called Hope Works, and it really does. And it was hope, and it brought us together. And do you mind if I grab her?
Please, please. I told you I would love to see her.
I'm gonna see. I'm gonna see if I can call her. She's probably in the room. Is that okay?
Yeah. Go
Okay.
ahead.
All right.
Go ahead. We're
All
waiting
right.
for you.
All right. I'm gonna grab her. I'm sorry. Let me
Take the
try and
time.
get her. Okay.
Guys, what an amazing story. I know you hear commenting. He's beyond incredible. And read the book. The book, he tells more details. He tells details about his job, how he was helping people, the kind of people that he was helping when he was working at that hospital. When he talks about the accident, he goes into more details about the accidents, a little bit about his family. And it is just like you said, it's an incredible story, but it's an incredible story of how no matter where he was during those adversities, he always had that connection to God, that conversation. And I always say, if you're mad, that's okay. If you have that communication with God, and you show that you're mad at God, you still have that connection.
All right. Do you want to see an angel?
Yes.
All right, Dave. Come on. Right here. There she is.
Hello.
Hey.
First of all, congratulations. I didn't know.
Oh, hold on. Hold on. I gotta. Geez, that would help, babe, if you could hear her. Let me take you off my earpods here. AirPods.
Can you hear me now? Not yet? Yeah? Now I cannot hear you. I can't hear you. You can hear me, but I can't hear you. Yeah, you're somehow muted. Check your mute button. Okay, hold on a second. Yeah, I can't unmute you. I can't. You're muted. I can't hear you. Can you bring it back to what it was before? Okay, now I can hear you.
All right, good. All right.
Okay,
Here.
can you hear me?
I can.
You can. So Steve said, say hi to both of them. And I'm so glad that
Yes,
I
we love
did.
Steve.
Yes, who doesn't?
Yes, true.
I'm telling you, I was just so overjoyed. Your wedding pictures are really a dream. You guys are both so stunning, and it was so wonderful to see. You know, he's a special person, but I'm sure you're an equally special person.
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, she's got an amazing story herself, and that happy ending that I didn't, it wasn't in the chapters. It is now, and what we've created together is really beautiful.
How
You know,
about if we do a second interview, and if you feel like sharing your story, would you
wow.
be interested?
I would be willing. Yes.
Okay, so I'll send out some dates, and then because it's going to be so beautiful to see how God is cooking stuff in each one individually and then puts them together, and it's part of the miracle.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I am so excited. I'm just going to try to concise this very quickly, but I have a very good friend, whose daughter was away. She was learning in seminary for the year. She was in Israel, so she was not here. And her mother, my friend, heard that this young boy was in a rowing accident, and he broke his neck. And like you, he became a paraplegic. And she knew more or less who the family was, but not too much. She didn't know the young man, but she volunteered to study with him, to learn the Bible with this young man, so the parents would have a break. And this way it wouldn't be awkward that she was spending time with him. She went to learn with him. The more she spent time with this young man, she came home and she told her husband, he's a great guy. I wish he married our daughter. So she then approached her daughter and said, would you go out with a young man whom I think you would fall in love with him, but he's quadriplegic? And her daughter was in Israel at that time, and she says, I have to think about it. And a week later, she called her mom and she said, yes, I would like to go out with him on a date. She knew nothing about him. It was going to be a blind date. Meantime, she calls the mother of the boy to go for lunch, and she tells him, I would like to set your son up. And the mother starts crying, bawling, like, wow, you think of my son in that way, that you can set him up? She says, yes, I would like to set him up with my daughter. Can you imagine how that other mother felt, that you would want my son, who I thought was so broken, you want for your daughter? The daughter came back from Israel, and they were going to set up the date. And all the difficulties to get out, to get into the car. And you're in the book, it shows how you practice so much to get into the car by yourself, to have your independence. He was not in that exact situation. So they said, okay, we're going to meet at the restaurant. And the girl said, no, no, no. If I'm going to go out with him, I'm going to go out with him just like I would have to go out with him if I'm married. I'm going to do everything. And she was a young girl, 19 years old, she was at the time. And she did pick him up, feed him, give him the straw, do everything. That was her first date. And a long story short, they're happily married. So, yeah, it's an incredible story. And I saw certain things, when I was hearing your story, and then I and how you amazing with a lot of content, like a life of meaning, because you have true connection, because there's faith, because there's hope, because there's tenacity and grit, and you have qualities. Tell you, Brandon, one of the parts.
We're breaking up a little bit. I'm sorry.
Take his phone away from him. Hopefully now it's going to be better.
Okay, Oh, I'm so sorry. Having technical issues here.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Hold on.
It might be on our end.
I can. Let me see. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
is
it's
it
better.
better?
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry about that. Go ahead and say that again.
No worries. One of a part of the book that was really, really hard for me, it was the part of when you were describing your mornings. That part, it was interesting because everything, right? Every moment, the moment of each accident, like I couldn't breathe as I'm reading. But I think the part that made me the saddest was when you were describing how when you wake up and how you're waiting for somebody to help you get out of bed. And I'm thinking it's that times every single day. It's that times, and I started thinking about every single aspect of our daily lives that we take for granted, that for you it's a struggle. And that part, I mean, I had like a knot in my throat. It took me days to kind of recover, because I was thinking about, everything that I'm doing. I can do this, but then you can't do this, and it was
Yeah.
that thought. And then I was thinking how we take so much for granted, and we think about, we call to God when we're in this moment of terrible pain, but we need to call to God all the time in gratitude for every little thing that we do have and we take for granted. When we take for granted
Hmm.
so much, so much. You said something, and I have to mention this. You said something uh, today, that when you were in your accident, when you went on your RV, and that person who found you said a blessing for you. And the second book that Steve gave me to read, he gave me homework. He said, I want you to promise me you're going to read this book and you're going to put this into practice for 30 days, no fail, is The Gentle Art of Blessing.
It's a
Have you
great book.
It's a great book. So I read it in a sitting, and now I created this new habit that I walk on my dog earlier in the day, because I can pass more people and I can start blessing people and people in their homes. And,
Yes.
and when you said how that person blessed you, the power that we have in prayer for others, in blessing for other people, that it is such a tremendous power. And how you love those you bless, right? How you start loving those that you bless. And when there is love, I mean, you conquer more, you're stronger, you can accomplish so much. So
Yeah, and it's right. It's the boomerang effect. When you bless others, that love comes back to you tenfold.
hundred
And
percent,
and I was choosing to love God. I was choosing to praise God. I was choosing, I was praying. That's blessing.
yeah,
And then I was blessed because of it. If I was yelling in anger and screaming and this isn't fair, I would have received that for my reward. I would have received that. That would have been my reality. And when you talk about pain in the mornings, it's still painful for me. Uh, there's some mornings my aides don't show up on time, and I've got I got clients I see all around the world that I help, and I think about them, and we all have pain. And what separates pain from suffering? And for me, if we can always look at pain, the little p for the big P, and the big P is purpose, seeing the purpose in it.
mhm,
And if I can find the purpose in the pain, it makes it more meaningful and bearable. But suffering is when I'm looking for negative ways to relieve it,
mhm.
and thinking negatively of it, then I will suffer. And I'll admit there's days where I do suffer, and that's my reward, and it's nothing but regret
Yeah.
by
Wow.
finding purpose in it.
That is very powerful. Are you familiar with the Japanese art of kintsugi?
Not really, no.
So I want you to look at it. Okay. I
Okay.
want you, I want you to, after your dinner, because I know you're
Sorry, babe.
hungry. I want you to Google kintsugi. Everything that I do, I'm also coaching, and I coach with the concept of the Japanese art called kintsugi. Kintsugi means golden joinery. In
Hmm.
Japan, when pottery breaks, they don't throw out the pottery, they mend it together. There's a whole way of mending. And then they highlighted the breaks with gold, making the pottery more beautiful, more
Hmm.
valuable. and also stronger. The lacquer that they use, it's called urushi. It's from a tree. It's actually very toxic, which is very interesting because the glue itself is something that you have to be very protected to gather from nature. It comes from nature, and it's very delicate. You have to know how to use it. So all this symbolism for kintsugi, it's such an incredible symbolism for us. And we're all broken in a way or another. But if we put it back together the proper way, if we do the proper work to mend, we become stronger, just like kintsugi, and more valuable. We're wiser. We are unique individuals. And I think that a lot of people hide what they went through, right? They don't want to share, they don't want to talk because they're filled with shame, embarrassment, but they're denying themselves the purpose because from my research, and I've done research for a few years, interviewing mainly women, but men too. But for 3 years, I interviewed women that went through adversity but are thrivers. And it is exactly in what broke us that we find our purpose. And just like you, it was exactly when I was reading about you going to the hospital and helping the people that were paraplegics. That is exactly like we go through something. It's our purpose is infused in our pain, in what we went through. So it goes really well together. The Japanese art is very inspiring, so many lessons. And when I
It's
coach my
beautiful.
clients, I use this symbolism to help them mend and heal and put themselves back together. I want,
I
Brandon,
love it.
I took a lot of your time. I think I could speak to you for a long, long time. We will do this
Yeah,
again with
likewise.
your beautiful wife. But I wanted you just to say some parting words. We heard, we're just before Easter, just before Passover, so many holidays, spiritual time that we're going to go through now. How Tell us something about how to keep the faith through adversity. How do we bring ourselves back? How do we foster this connection with God?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of ways I could answer this. I think maybe one way that you might look at it is it's how we ask the why question. And when we go through adversities, how often do we ask, why is this happening to me? And it usually falls on deaf ears. We want answers, and we don't get it. But it's the manner in which we're asking the why question. I wonder if we asked it differently, if we asked it, why is this happening for me? And see it as, what's the opportunity in it? What answers it is the heart usually, and it connects you. Why? The why the adversity happened to me was because I always wanted to be a strong person. That's what my heart tells me. Why? It's because I wanted to find the love of my life, and if I had to go through my 4 accidents to find it, I would do it again. Why is because I wanted to be connected to God. That's the why for me. When you have difficulties, don't look at it as, why is this happening to me? But why is this happening for me? I think that's a nice place to start, to see it as God sees it, in a new light, in a different way.
Wow. Brilliant. It's all in the questions. How good the questions are, that's the kind of answers that we get.
Yep.
And I think that you rephrased it brilliantly.
What you focus on is what you become.
That's
In
right.
Proverbs, it talks all about that.
That's right. Brandon, this was beyond, I felt all the feels. I recommend everybody to go and get the book and read it because you're going to be inspired. Even though you heard the story, there's so many details here. I hope you revise, and the next one includes your wife.
Oh, most definitely will.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
it's
she's amazing. I found my match in every sense of the word. She's incredible.
What a blessing. What a blessing. And I want to bless you. I want to bless the
Thank
two
you.
of you that together you're going to see so many wonderful miracles. And that you two together are going to be a light onto the world. You're going to shine this light onto people, not only make people see God, meet God, know how to have a relationship with God, but also I have confidence that the two of you will be able to show how to have a good relationship, a respectful connection that today is so lost in the youth of today. People don't understand what it is, true marriage, true connection with God or with your better half. And also how you speak so beautifully about your parents and your family. You know, we're losing that respect for family, that love for family. And I think that the three pillars of your marriage, your extended family, and obviously with God, you have that so strongly. So I bless you with many, many opportunities to shine this light into the world and inspire people to know what really is important.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you.
My
I
pleasure.
appreciate that.
And we will be in touch so we can schedule our time.
Sounds wonderful.
Thank you.
Kisses
All
to
right,
both
blessing
of
you. All right.
go eat your dinner now.
Will do.
Okay,
Pleasure.
my pleasure. Good night, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. And we're going to have some amazing, other amazing speakers. So keep in the lookout, and I'll see you then. Bye bye.